So welcome to my humble abode, my home away from home when I'm working. I'm staying on a campsite that happens to rent out rooms, very near work. I got a bit carried away with this idea, to be honest. As you can see by what's lying on the bed, I've bought more pairs of stays, bodies and corsets than there are days of the week that I'm away working. But you know, this leaves me lots of options. So just a little guide to what's here. This is a pair of Tudor paste bodies. They're stiffened with buckram, which is made by painting either rabbit skin glue or gum tragacanth paste onto linen and letting it dry and building up the layers and then sewing it into the bodice. I have a pair of jumps, which are copied from the ones in Jill Salin's book, but using 18th century stays making technique to stitch them. I have a pair of long stays with a wooden busk, which are boned, well, they're not boned at all, they've just got cording in them, and then the wooden bust down the front. And then over here I've got a I think that's a turn of the century corset. I think it's from the Jean Honeysett book. It's a little bit short in the body for me, that one, but it's a nice corset, so I thought I'd bring it with me. I've got my 1903 quite curvy corset and my 1912 quite straight one, and then I've got just a little elasticated sort of fun waist thing there as well. I also bought far more clothes with me than I needed, so I've got a selection of blouses as normal, chemise, some long skirts, but I also bought a Regency dress and petticoat with me, plus some other Edwardian petticoats, a normal skirt, and then just some cardigans and my little overalls and my jacket, and then a selection of scarves. Let me face you and talk to you. One of the disadvantages of filming here is that the lighting will be dreadful. So I have the options here to wear stays, bodies, corsets every day, either with period appropriate clothing or underclothes that they're not going to affect wearing them. The Regency stuff, I think we'll see how weird I feel like being at work. I don't know. I mean, everyone, you know, I've been working here for a couple of months now. People are kind of used to me. They're used to how I dress. They know I dress more historically sometimes than others. So they wouldn't really comment on me wearing a Regency dress into work, I don't think. But I haven't bought like a bonnet and my pelisse or a Spencer with me. I've just bought the stays, the petticoat and the gown, so I'll probably end up like wearing it with the cardigan, which might look a bit odd, but you know, we'll see how comfortable I'm feeling. Again, the Tudor bodice, like the paste bodies, I haven't bought, like, it's not attached to a kirtle. It was something I made when I was experimenting with buckram and how to use it actually a year ago, and so I made a bodice as historically minded as I could, and I also made one theatrically, and I compared wearing them, how the pasteboard bodies reacted versus a boned bodice reacted to the body. So again, I may not wear that, but I have also worn it as support while running, because at the time of making it, I wasn't really doing anything that a 16th century person was doing apart from going about my daily life, so I wore it while running to see how the rabbit skin glue pasteboard reacted to human body and sweat, and you know what, it was pretty good. So if I go for a run, maybe I'll use it like that instead. I'll show you how that works. So yeah, this is not some great big reaction to corset wearing. This is just me having fun with the clothes that I have and wearing them about my daily life, and we'll see how it goes from there. So starting with what I'm wearing today: cardigan, blouse, tie, skirt, petticoat, corset, bloomers, and I've got an ordinary vest on underneath rather than a chemise. This is a 1903 corset. It's made in Coutil. It's got a busk front, it's got synthetic whalebone throughout, and it's got steels on the back. I've not got it pulled particularly tight. I've got a 2.5 to 3 inch gap at the back. When I originally made it, it was I was smaller. It does have a fairly impressive hip spring, and when I made this corset, this is my practice go at this corset, when I made the second one, I left more room for my hips, and so they're even more sort of fashionable hippie shape that I don't really need skirt padding unless I want to create a really extravagant figure. So if I take the petticoat off, I don't want to make this too strippy. They are antique bloomers, they're not split, they're just on elastic, and they've got tube elastic in them, so they don't really sit on my waist. So if you don't want to create a lot of bulk around the waistline, they're quite good. So yeah, so if I give you a shot at the back, it's not pulled particularly tightly. I know I can pull it a bit tighter, but because I was going to be driving and sort of going about my day wearing this, I didn't want it to be extreme, and it just created a nice shape under my clothes. So now I'm going to get ready for bed. So now I'm wearing my wounded soldier stroke old man pyjamas, courtesy of Darcy Clothing. You will have seen these on TV a lot. My final act now is to put my hair in curlers, because I washed it today and didn't have time to curl it, and I almost never wear my hair completely straight. So let's do that. And that's me ready for bed. Good night. Good morning. And now what feels like a much more normal morning for me, I'm going to just hem the inside of my skirt back up because it had all come undone. And rather than wearing it for another day and kicking a bit more of it down with my boot heels, I'm going to do that now. The skirt is big enough in the hem for me to do this while I'm still wearing it, so that's handy. So while I stitch that up, I'll talk a little bit more. So I don't think, you know, despite showing you how I've dressed, I don't think anyone at work is going to particularly notice that I look any different, because I'm wearing a skirt I've always worn to work. The shawl and the cardigan, they make up part of my general look. So I'm not going to make a big song and dance out of this. I'm actually hoping it might even improve my posture sitting at a machine all day wearing a corset. I feel like the biggest giveaway that I'm wearing in costume is actually the fact I've got a taffeta petticoat on today, which is a bit noisier. And the reason I've put the taffeta one on is because this skirt with the bias cut seam on the centre front tends to hang a bit unattractively without the extra oomph of a swishy petticoat to hold it out. The bit I'm sewing back down here is the hem facing, which is made of waterproof cotton. So I'm just sewing it to the tarlatan flap lining of the skirt. You know, black on brown, absolutely riveting material for you. Because I can't film or even photograph anything at work, I can't really update you during the day. But today was a completely normal day at work. I'm making repeat costumes of a garment that has already been made and established, so I know what I'm doing. So I'm now just repeating making it. So I spent most of the day either standing or sitting at my table, either cutting, using a domestic machine. So a fairly sedentary day. As I've said before, the reason I picked sewing for a job is because it's an indoor job with no heavy lifting. In fact, probably at times slightly uncomfortable because I spent so much of the day sitting in a corset. Not on my waist, a little bit of pressure on my rib cage, and the worst irritation actually comes from the fact that the armholes on my chemise are a bit low and the top of the corset rubs on it. So this chemise was designed for a lower 1912 corset shape, and I'm wearing the higher 1903 shape. Although I think it probably rubs a bit on the 1912 one because the armholes are just a bit too low. The neckline's quite high. I really like that about it, so that needs a little bit of adjustment in the future. But yeah, the only irritation I've got is from where the top of the corset's rubbing onto my arms, sort of here. I ate lunch fairly slowly, so that was probably really good for me because normally I bolt my food. It did improve my posture tremendously. Maybe I really should just consider doing this all the time because I do hunch over my work a lot. What I did notice from sitting down, especially in the afternoon where I've been quite a long period of time sitting down, everything sort of rode up a little bit, like the corset rode up my body, my blouse rode up my body. So I sort of had to go and adjust it and pull everything back down onto the waist. So yeah, that was fine. So it's been a good 12, 13, 14 hours in the corset now. But I must admit, you know, a very unstrenuous day. I'll try and do something a bit more active tomorrow to prove a point. Alright then, so we'll leave that there for now. Day 1.5 of corset wearing while costume making. Bye. Good evening, we're at the end of day 2 now. I mean, it barely feels like I've been participating or wearing a corset today, because I'm not. I'm wearing a 16th century inspired pair of bodies stiffened entirely with rabbit skin glue buckram, which is linen painted with glue to build up layers, hand sewn into the construction, and then encased in wool and linen. It's very comfortable. The wide square neckline means there's a tiny bit of rubbing here on my arms, but I've worn this quite a bit and fitted it quite tightly and snugly. If I had sleeves attached to this, then that might pull down, which would change how it fits and need adjusting. But as it's a little sleeveless bodice, bearing in mind it should really be attached to a skirt, and it's not, which would also help keep it down on the waist. Just wearing it today over a shirt and a petticoat and my skirt. No compression on the waist, just comfortable. There's a little dip on the waist, which is a sort of fashionable cut of the latter part of the 16th century. Because there's no boning and no metal stiffening in it, well, that does sort of stick out over my stomach during wear. When I take it off, I'll show you what I mean. But yeah, that's the only sort of sign that I've been wearing it all day, and that's not uncomfortable on my stomach. It's more the fact that the garment is bent and distorted. So yeah, I've been incredibly comfortable today. I've been fine. I felt very nice. I think this has definitely hastened my desire to make some more everyday kirtles, which I've seen other people do with great success. And I quite like it with my collarless shirt. The reason I bought this collarless shirt with me is because I had thought it would be quite nice to wear a starched stiff collar, you know, how this should do up with a collar stud at the back and a long collar stud at the front. In all this talk of corsets being uncomfortable, worn for long hours, I find it really funny that they didn't mention that if you put people who are not used to wearing stiff starched high collars and studs on with a shirt, people that are used to sort of floppy soft collars, goodness me, do they find that uncomfortable. And that's something to think about, you know, that it isn't just corsets restricting the body. You know, shirt collar shapes and fashions have changed so much in the last 150 years. Anyway, I couldn't find, in all my packing, I didn't find my starched collars. I knew where my collar studs were, which is always a good start. I didn't find my starched collars, and so I didn't pack them. One day I will also get myself some cufflinks for this shirt, because as you can see I've got a safety pin rather than cufflinks. So as I've gone for the soft option today, I think tomorrow we'll go for the bit more extreme shape. I'll wear my other 1903 corset, but this one was designed to go under a ball gown, and I'd really mastered the art of padding my bust on this one, because I need a little assistance there, like a lot of people. I may even go for the hip padding as well. We'll see how it looks. I will leave you here tonight with this and see you again in the morning. So here are my little bodies after a day of me wearing them, and this is what I meant by the pointed waistline sticking up from where it's been resting over my stomach, and you can see there's quite a solid bend and a ridge in the buckram. Now if it was boning, the boning would bend like this over time, especially if it was metal boning, but the buckram can actually be pressed with a warm iron, or even just flattened with your fingers and left with a weight over it, because the heat from your body moulds and shapes the buckram, but while it's cooling down and sort of drying out from wear, you can refashion it and reshape it. And yes, there will always be some wear on the waistline with any sort of predominant dip or point, but this is actually recoverable. So if I leave something over this overnight, or if I was at home, I would just press it with an iron and reshape it. My bodies would be ready to wear again the next day. But I just thought I'd explain that, because I don't. I'd like to say that I succeeded wonderfully today and was comfortable, and it was fine being tightly laced, but again, sitting all day at a domestic machine, I don't think I forgot I was wearing it. It was always there. I did even go and loosen it a bit at lunchtime, which I'm not sure that really made any difference. Maybe that was just psychological, that it felt better. Absolutely fine while standing, moving, walking, but yeah, sitting for long periods of time, I can feel it you can't see, but it's sort of like bottom of my rib cage, front and back. So I think that is a failing of my fitting. So I need to let out on the ribs, but I'm not quite sure how I still retain the waist cinching, because the waist side of it was fine. So that's something to think about for future patterning. So now the question is, do I persevere wearing this until I get used to see if I get used to it, or whether it's something that this corset stays completely as for going to a ball, because it feels fine for going to a ball. You know, if you're dancing and moving and standing, absolutely fine. Sitting for short periods of time, fine. But sitting all day working, maybe my job wasn't occupying me enough. I did switch and do something else for a little while, and I had to think about that and what I was doing and what I was achieving, and yeah, I definitely thought about the corset less then. So maybe I just need a very demanding job and I won't notice it. No, I don't think so. I think this is something that fit issues need to be addressed to make it comfortable for me. And obviously I'm not really tight lacing, but I was lacing down to a certain size because that skirt wasn't going on unless I was a certain measurement. There was no give in that waistband. And because it's my cycling skirt, it has very deep pleats on the centre back anyway, I'm just going to adjust them and make it a bit bigger so I can wear it with my either this corset less tightly laced or the paler teal one. Having said that, I've now come in, I've eaten my dinner. What time is it? I've been in the corset for 12 hours now. Be perfectly entitled to take it off if I felt like it. So yeah, not fully successful. Rather than go back, so now I need to think about what I want to wear tomorrow. Rather than just go back to the teal corset, maybe I'll either go for an Edwardian corset, or I might see if I can adapt my Regency long stays to work under a blouse and skirt. I don't feel like wearing the Regency dress into work. Alright then, so I think we're leaving this here for tonight, and I'll see you again tomorrow. So I had a little test try on last night, and I'm going to wear my Regency long stays under my normal clothes. Because they are backlacing, I've made a and I used to contort myself terribly to get into these. I've done some temporary fan lacing, so rather than a long lace, I've got 6 individual laces that are threaded around each other and then pulled to the side, making sure they overlap in the middle, and then they come out to a point here, and then they have an extending bit of tape on the end which I can tie around the front. I'm not going to wear my dress that goes with it, but I'm going to wear some of my sort of more Edwardian style blouses that are a bit looser, and I'll just use the larger of the waistbands of my skirts, probably the one that I still haven't sewn a hook and eye on, so it's a bit adjustable. So the cording on the gussets is fairly decorative. The centre front has a wooden basque, but this cording and this cording around the gussets on the hips to give you more shape and movement does serve a purpose. And again, this is sort of, I was copying this from one I had seen, and so it's not really to compress the waist, it's more just to prevent wrinkling. You'll see when I put it on. But please bear in mind that when I made this, it was some years ago, and I think I definitely could do with a new pair. So the fit is not as good as it used to be. I've just put my cold cream on, so I have the shiniest face in the world. Bad timing. I had a very successful day wearing Regency long line stays under Edwardian clothes. Didn't look like the right silhouette at all. It probably looked like I was wearing a very high sports bra, but I don't care. I was very comfortable. I mean, nothing's going on restricting wise below the rib cage. That's partly because they no longer fit as well as they used to. They're not meant to cinch me in, they're just meant to smooth everything out and support the bust. And they did, and I had amazing posture, again, sitting all day. It was commented on by one person, admittedly that's a person who also wears corsets and knew about my experiment for the week, and they said that it was very obvious that I was sitting very upright at the machine. So if nothing else, I think I've learned that maybe a little bit of corset wearing at work will improve my posture in the long run. I mean, I don't feel any different for it, but I'm certainly sitting better. And considering how I look when I sew, sometimes that can only be an improvement. So last day at work tomorrow, I'm going to go with the black corset again, but not so tightly laced, and maybe I'll add a bit of padding to give me the oomph of the era rather than rely on my natural hip spring. Yeah, I want to give that one another chance, but not as tight because I have a 3-hour drive home at the end of the day. I know I did bring an Edwardian corset with me, but having looked at it, it's just had better days. It's one I made 9 years ago now, and I would do it very differently to how I did then. I'll put a picture in of what it looks like so you have an idea. It was made from copying an original, but I didn't get what was so good about the original in my copy, I don't think. So good learning curve, but definitely one to revisit. And so I'm not going to wear that because I know it won't create the right silhouette. It certainly won't look very good. I don't want other people seeing it and judging me on it. Give the black teal corset another go tomorrow. Alright, that's all for now. Oh no, it's not. As you can see here, the busk is sitting up a little bit where I'm sitting down. The beauty of it is I can also just take it out. So that is the busk that was in the front of my corset all day and achieved my very Regency divide and separate, and also solid posture, and it was quite comfortable. I was leaning against it at the table, which was quite an odd sensation because it wasn't like a metal busk at all. There was no bend. But yeah, very successful wooden bust. Alright then, we'll leave that there for tonight, and I'll see you for final day tomorrow. Good night. Alright, it's Saturday morning, I'm home. I got back last night, hence it was a bit late, so I didn't record anything about how I felt about yesterday. The looser laced black corset worked very comfortably yesterday. I did take the bum pad off to drive home because it felt like having a very strange cushion trying to sit in the car with that. And although I really liked the silhouette, so I think I'll be wearing the bum pad with that skirt more frequently because I really enjoyed how it looked. And I've often been resistant to padding my hips and bottom before, but actually let's make them bigger rather than pretend they're not there. Yes, so I've continued dressing in the same way today. I've just got a variation of what I've worn already. Nothing too strenuous planned for today, a little bit of house tidying, doing all of the washing from being away in the week, so wearing more layers of clothing has produced more laundry than normal, and getting ready to go back to work again tomorrow evening. So I've really enjoyed this week. No, it hasn't really added anything to the debate. I don't think corsets are the problem, but we all knew that beforehand. Obviously the fit of a corset makes a great difference. My main feeling towards body image, the film industry, is that it's as bad whatever anyone's wearing. All of the best efforts of lots of people, unfortunate body image ideas, that exists everywhere, just like it does in our world. So I think we all just need to be a bit more accepting of our body shapes and figures. And yes, embracing shapewear and corsetry and garments that work for you, but making sure they really fit you and make you feel good, not be what other people expect. Not to perpetuate ideas that other people expect people's bodies to look like. But again, that's not new information, that's nothing groundbreaking, that's just how I feel. I hope I can learn to speak up a little when saying, but do we really think that if something's said negatively about someone's body? I am not a designer, I'm not a producer, I'm not a director, I'm not the performer. And also, you know, make sure I don't say things about myself negatively, feeding into someone else's mind. And there you are, there's a chaotic roundup to my week. I definitely need a new pair of long stays. I definitely need a new Edwardian corset. I have the Rilla pattern. I'm really looking forward to trying that from Scroop Patterns. I still could do with a good everyday turn of the century 1900 corset for me. The two I have, the black one hip shape wise is better, but not perfect. The Coutil practice one, which is the one I'm wearing today, is actually fine if I barely pull on it at all. But but I'd like to be able to have a sort of pale teal one like that I can pull in, but it really needs more hip room added. And the little paste bodies are fine because they were purely an experiment, but they're not made in a colour you could wear in the 16th century. That definitely is the reason to carry on and make some kirtles and bodies that are stiffened by buckram for wearing for 16th century reenactment, and maybe everyday life kirtles. I think that would look lovely. That's been a dream of mine since I was about 15, and I've seen other people do it tremendously. I'd really like that for me too. So there we have a little roundup. Thank you for coming along. I hope it hasn't been too dull. It's fairly dull, appalling editing, dreadful lighting. But despite all of that, I hope it causes some amusement. Thank you, goodbye. Spotted a huge cobweb behind the curtain. Just get rid of that. Obviously I will sit a little bit differently in a corset. I'm actually kind of hoping it will improve my posture. Here's my alarm.